We will put Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is so great to have you with us. If you joined a little bit early, you got to hear us chatting about how excited we are that this is finally here. So I would love to do a few introductions, some housekeeping, and then turn it over to these two incredible women. So first, I would love to introduce Chris Cason. He is the EA here at IAAP. So he is the executive assistant to the Association for Executive Assistants. No pressure. He does an incredible job for us. So thank you, Chris. He will be in chat and Q&A. You'll kind of see him bouncing around. I know several of you on here, but for those of you who don't, my name is Rachel Seaman. I'm the Chief Experience Officer here at IAAP, and I'm so thrilled to be here. And I know that a lot of you are already doing this, but if you have not taken a minute, please pop into chat and introduce yourself and where you are calling from in the world. We would love to see it. And hello to those of you who are watching the recording. We are recording this and we'll send it out after, which is part of my housekeeping. I'm getting ahead of myself, but want to make sure and acknowledge you all who are joining us post as well. So as I mentioned, we are recording. We will send it out. Please feel free to use chat freely. I know I am preaching to the choir. Our community is so absolutely incredible about chatting to each other. And if you want to connect with each other, I definitely recommend you pop your LinkedIn profile in there. It's a great way to stay connected. Regardless of any and all other communities that you join, LinkedIn seems to be a great central one. So start with that one and go from there. But all the networking you can do, would be amazing with us. If you have a question, an actual question for someone on the screen, please go ahead and pop it in the Q&A box. We do have some time reserved at the end of the session to answer a few questions, and we want to make sure those don't get lost in chat. Oh, before I move away from chat, I forgot. I think most of you have seen it, but make sure that you do the drop down to everyone. Zoom webinar can be kind of tricky, and we want to make sure that you're not just talking to us, you're talking to all of the amazing people on the screen with us. And lastly, the format of this session is really informal. It was titled Fireside Chat, and that was really intentional. So there are a few key points that we want to hit on, but it really is an organic dialogue between these two incredible powerhouse women who are championing this essential profession for us. So that is my segue to turn it over to them and ask them to introduce themselves to you and share a little bit about their journey that brought them to us today. So Skevi, would you like to go first?
Hi everyone. Well, first of all, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Rachel, and also just thank you for the warm invitation to be with you all here. So I'm Skevi Constantino. I'm based in Birmingham in England, and I am a former executive assistant, and in 2018 I created the PA Way, which essentially is a professional learning and lifestyle platform for anybody who is an assistant and business support professional. And we do things really quirky and fun, and we're all about leveling up. And I am absolutely obsessed with our profession, and I'm just so thrilled to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's amazing. And Melissa.
Thank you. And I also appreciate your warm welcome, Rachel. I get to hear it quite frequently. But we have created quite a dynamic just with the people on the screen and our conversations leading up to this fireside chat. So I so appreciate all of us being able to come together here today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Melissa Mahoney. I am currently serving as IAAP's Chief Executive Officer. But what you may not know is that I actually began my career with IAAP as an administrative assistant in our finance and accounting department almost 17 years ago. It will be 17 years in January that I have been with the association. I started my career actually as a teacher by profession and trade. And so my introduction to both business and kind of the office work environment, workplace, and the administrative profession were both here at IAAP. So I've had such a tremendous an incredible learning journey here throughout my tenure at IAAP. And like Skevi, I bring to my current role all of my experience as an actual administrative assistant. So it gives, I think, both of us quite an interesting and unique perspective on being a thought leader in the profession. So I'm just really, really excited to be here and to share some of our ideas and thoughts. We were having some pretty dynamic dialogue and just thought we should be sharing this conversation with more than just the four of us on the screen. So that is really why we are here today. So very excited to be here.
I love it. Thank you both. Well, and I will shout out that I was an admin myself and started at the association as an administrative professional. So you all, admins represent on this screen. So it's really exciting, and I can't wait to dive in. So I would love to kind of start by addressing the elephant in the room, if you will. And we heard from some people that kind of spoke about, and all in good hearts, like a competition mindset. Like, Skevy, you have the PA way, you offer things that can be very similar to what we offer at IAAP, and why are we all on this screen together? And I think it's a really great point to share. So I would love to hear from both of you, whoever wants to go first, why I mean, Mel, you spoke to it already, but why we felt it was so essential to come together and have this conversation jointly.
Yeah, I'm happy to dive in first, and then Debbie obviously would love to hear your thoughts too. I think first and foremost, as the association that has been around for over 80 years supporting the profession, I actually believe that IAAP has a responsibility to collaborate with other thought leaders, and from a mentoring capacity, if we can offer other people who are doing what we do or trying to do what we do or supporting the profession in any way, shape, or form, that actually makes us better. And it actually supports our mission to be collaborative versus having that competitive mindset, and feeling like we can't share or own or share ownership of this work with other people. I think it actually does us a disservice. And I do believe we have a very large responsibility to share this work and make sure that we're providing value to as many administrative professionals as possible. And that includes not being everything for everyone all the time. That's an impossible feat. That's something we would never be able to achieve. So there is room and space, I believe, for us to collaborate instead of compete. So I'll say that, and I know Skevy has great thoughts and ideas around this too.
Oh no, thank you, Melissa. Yeah, I get asked that a lot as well about when I creatively collaborate with other platforms, other organizations. And for me, the first rule is you'll never see me collaborate with anyone that I don't feel is truly aligned with the mission to help the profession. It's something that I feel really deeply with every fiber of my being, and for me with IAAP it just seemed like such a good fit because of the work and the continued work that they do. So for me it was really exciting to creatively collaborate. The second thing is I genuinely am only in competition with myself, and I say that in the place of I don't look and think, oh, what's that person doing? I need to be better than that person. I always benchmark against who I was yesterday, what did I achieve today, and how can I level up tomorrow? And I always think, Melissa touched on it briefly about taking what you can from other networks. I have loyal Royal members who are on this call, and this is like probably the first time that they're being introduced to IAAP, and equally it might be some of the members of your IAAP learning about the PA way. If you're putting your eggs in one basket, you're not leveling up. And I truly think that if you are in the room, whether it's a Zoom room or an actual in-person room, and you're either the smartest person there or you think that you know everything, then you're in the wrong room. I will only go into places where I know that I can take and learn from different people, even if it's competitors, whatever it is. Everyone has their zone of genius. Everyone brings something to the table. So for me, collaboration over competition, always.
I also, I would add something, Skevy, you mentioned early on in our conversations that I thought was brilliant. And that is that I think we are all very confident, we all on the screen are very confident about what we provide and the value that we can have for the profession. And that actually creates more space for collaboration, because we aren't, we aren't approaching this from a competitive standpoint. We aren't threatened by the things that we have to offer. And that creates amazing space for us to have conversations like this where there isn't that underpinning of competitive nature surrounding the dialogues. I thought that was a brilliant, I think it is very true about both the PA way and IAAP.
Thank you. No, and it's, I think it's so true. So, I've learned already so much from Chris, just from the things that he's been providing backstage, the way he sends his emails, the way he executes things as well. So even though I'm not in the profession anymore as an EA, I was looking at the things that Chris was sending. I was thinking, this is so resourceful. I wish I knew him when I was an EA, because he was bringing his zone of genius. And it's the same with Rachel and yourself, Melissa. We can't be everything to everybody. And I encourage everybody on the call to kind of tap into that zone of genius of what you confidently bring to the table. And even if you're in the running for a promotion with somebody else, whatever the outcome is, kind of connect and leverage, because as they say, your network is your net worth. And it's the people around you that you'll really tap into and use as a resource. So yeah, I learned from everybody on this call. So yeah, it's really, really exciting.
I love that. I love that. And you talked about zone of genius, and we talked about it on our last call. And so I think I would love for both of you to kind of expound on that. And Skevi, I'll start with you since that's your term, and I totally want to steal it, by the way. But it really is, as administrative professionals, all of us on the screen, we can speak to this. It's so easy to fall into a trap of, I do need to be all things to all people, right? And I need to be good at all the things. And if I'm not, what may happen? And I loved what we were talking about on our last meeting around being resourceful and knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and really leaning into both. So can both of you address that, not only from an individual admin's point of view, but from a 50,000 foot view of the profession in addition?
Yeah, I think you need to be confident in knowing what you bring to the table, and also the things that you might not be good at. It's not that you're not good at them. There's opportunity to learn and how to excel in those things. Everything's an opportunity. That's the way it's how your perception is. However, I am self-confessed. If somebody says to me, Skevi, make me a PowerPoint, or Skevi, make me Excel document, I will probably break out in a sweat, because that is not my zone of genius at all. But I am really good at connecting people and being really resourceful. So 10 out of 10, I'll probably get the task done through the skill set that I do have. And I really encourage all the assistants and business support professionals on this call to not downplay the skills that you are absolutely phenomenal at. Don't go into 2023 playing small. Really start leveling up. Realize that you're leaders, that you're the people. Without you, those organizations do not run. That's power in itself. You bring that power. They need to even know what time their lunch break is. So you have all that at your fingertips. So don't play small for 2023. Go in there and know your worth and what zone of genius you bring to the table. That's my view on it.
I love that. The zone of genius is one of my favorite phrases that I've heard in 2022. So thank you, Skevi, for giving us that gift. I think it's a beautiful way to describe how we can really harness our strengths and know and understand what our opportunities are, and how we can be resourceful even in those things that may not be a strength for us. How can we make connections so that we can get those things done without spinning our wheels and spending too much time on something that someone else could do brilliantly in a very short amount of time. So making those connections, your example was a beautiful example of that. But you also said something about leading and being a leader. And I really think that is discovering your zone of genius and then being really confident and resourceful in knowing your zone of genius is actually a leadership competency. That is a leadership skill. And so often we do not attribute the word leader to admin because they don't have they don't have the title, or they may not have the in decision making responsibilities. But man, what you do have is influence, and that influence is so incredibly powerful. And I think we take it for granted. Often we don't even recognize or see it. So for 2023, I really do think the competency that is going to change the profession, the trajectory of the role, is leadership. And I know that encompasses all kinds of competencies and skill sets and things, but this idea or mindset that admins are not leaders, I mean, if we can just erase that from our paradigm, because it is not true. Chris on this call is a wonderful testament to leadership in an executive assistant role. He leads us, he leads our board. He may not be doing it in the traditional sense, the way that we all think of leadership, but that's the piece that we've got to undo. This idea, we've all had experiences that have built this concept of leadership for us, and most of them are attributed to a title or someone who's seated in a position of authority. And that's really not what makes a leader. In fact, I would argue there are lots of people with titles, lots of people with corner offices, lots of people who have authority who are not great leaders. And I think we can all think of easy, quick examples of that. So I really do believe that this zone of genius, harnessing it, is a part of leadership competency. I think they go hand in hand. And I do think that is the thing that will change or transform the value of the profession as we move into 2023 and beyond.
Yeah. I think it's so just to add to that as well, Melissa, it's going back to what you were saying about Chris. Even though I've not met you yet, Chris, you, even just through your communication, for me, I'm so honored to be in the profession alongside you, because you have that quiet confidence about what you know, what you bring to the table. And we are all leaders as assistants, and it's important to have that confidence to know what you bring to the table, because if we don't believe in ourselves as assistants, how are we going to convey our leadership skills? How are they going to put that trust into us to be making decisions at the board table with them? So it's kind of like stepping up to level up even more in the profession, and having that quiet confidence to know, you know what, I am an esteemed, skilled professional in this field. I know that I'm good at my job. And it's not an arrogance, and it's not a cockiness and having a bit of a chip on your shoulder. It's being so secure with who and what you bring to that table that it kind of radiates. And confidence is contagious. Once you start walking with your shoulders back and knowing what you bring into that office, your other colleagues will be like, oh my God, well, what's she drinking, or what's he drinking? I want some of that. And that's how we want the profession to continue to soar, so that we are respected, that we are taken as a serious profession, that we do get learning and development training. But we can only do that if we all level up collectively together.
So true. And I like to think of business. I think we've shared this analogy before, but if you look at the spoke of a wheel, like a bicycle tire, admin is really the center, right? And the spokes are important, but without that center, I'll tell you what, y'all, that wheel is not going anywhere. So there's a lot of power in that. And Skevi, like you said, not over the top, I'm amazing and I have no room to grow, because I think that's also the takeaway of this conversation already, is that we all have room to grow. We all have room to be our best selves in that space, but also recognizing that center of the wheel is pretty important.
Definitely. I think with the growth, if you're shrinking yourself, don't shrink yourself into places that you've outgrown, but equally don't go into places where there is no room for growth. You need to be kind of having a good balance to know, yes, I've learned from this experience, but I'm so excited about who I can be and what I can do going forward. I think our profession is so awesome. It really is.
That's so true. That takes some self-awareness and self-reflection, right? So that's really important. So if you, we've talked a little bit about it, but all of us on the screen are true advocates of the profession. Whether we are still in the profession or we are advocating on behalf of the profession, we are in it to win it. So how do you, or would you really showcase the value of both the profession and the professionals that it encompasses to organizations and businesses who maybe just don't get it yet?
That's a great topic that we could probably spend more time than we have on this fireside chat on. But I have a couple of thoughts. The first one really is a fairly simple ROI discussion around the money that you actually save by having a fully developed and empowered administrative workforce. And there's a pretty easy calculation there where you can actually show companies, if you're spending X amount on your administrative staff, here's what you're actually saving in executive time. Here's the hours and time that your executives can bring revenue into your organization. There's an easy kind of calculation that we like to talk to executives about. And that tends to connect some dots for them, or at least open up the never really thought of it like that in a black and white. We tend to look at the administrative workforce as a non-revenue generating part of our business. So when they are looking at it on paper, they're not looking at it from a true cost benefit ratio scenario. So we like to talk from that perspective, just to kind of open the door to some of those dialogues. But there's a whole other side of the impact that having a developed and empowered workforce really does for the executive administrative workforce specifically. And that's really in the partnering space. And I talked a little bit about influence and how that is one of the things that we tend to take for granted or overlook in our role, how influential we can be. And from the executive or leadership's perspective, if you can actually get them to see and understand that if they can tap into that influence and use it to really get or achieve the things that they're looking to achieve in terms of cultivating a culture throughout their organization, or whatever the initiative is or the strategy of the organization is, if they can drive that through the administrative workforce, who, as you mentioned, Rachel, is completely connected to the spokes on that wheel in a way that leadership is not. So there's a divide often between leadership and the workforce who is actually doing the things to achieve whatever the goals or outcomes are. The admin can actually be the connector there and can create so much positive momentum and influence. And I just don't think that we recognize or see it. So if you can really paint a picture for them that shows them how they can use the administrative workforce to really achieve and deliver on results in a way that they've never imagined or dreamed of, it does start to change their mind around how critical these roles are, how important it is to provide development space for them, development dollars, resources, time, and how important it is to empower those who are in the position. So I'll say that and pass it to you, Scubby.
No, I was so immersed with what you were saying. I was like, yes. Well, my thoughts are very similar to Melissa's, and I just want to kind of give this as a scenario sort of thing. So if I was to randomly say now, obviously pretend Scubby's having an out-of-body experience, if I was to say to all of you on this call now, I think you're terrible at your job, for argument's sake, for hypothetically speaking, and I don't think assistants have got any value, I'm sure that chat would be people saying, how dare you, and this and that. So why is it that we are okay with the narrative of being told by our organizations that we work for, because hell, I've been there, being told that you're just an assistant, and we accept that narrative of, yeah, okay, my boss and my organization have told me I'm just an assistant, I might as well just carry on, be seen and not heard. We need to kind of almost cause an uprising to have our voice heard, to be seen, and to stop accepting that these years of stigma of you're just an assistant and we're stereotyped and we don't have a voice and we don't have any sort of value needs to go out the window, and we need to change the profession collectively together. But we can only do that if we're one profession and one voice. So I implore you all to start being the advocate for the profession in your organization. Drop that fear of thinking, oh, I will be rejected or they won't listen to me. You have so much more power than everybody probably gives themselves credit for. And back when I was in as an EA, I kind of had that self-starter attitude of, well, if they won't change it, I'm going to help try to change it. And I kind of kept putting business case letters forward to them. I was finding research to say that you're massively underpaying everybody who's an assistant in this company. You know, you're not giving us the promotions that we deserve. And it started to have like a ripple effect. So other assistants were coming over to me in secret, and they were like, I found more research, please be the voice, you know. And when you have people who then depend on you to kind of be that voice, and this was before I even made the PA way, by the way, you kind of feel like you're all there in solidarity. So you're representing, it's almost like you're linking arms with everybody, and you're going there and you're positioning yourself in front of that organization and saying, we are the return on investment. We're making you look good. It's because of us that you know where you are in the morning, that you're prepared for all your meetings for the rest of the day, all your agendas, everything. So why is it that I'm not given the respect? And my background is originally hospitality. So Melissa saying that she was a teacher, I actually trained as a chef when I left school. So my background was hospitality and catering. And when I was in the hospitality world, I couldn't understand why in a hotel, all the housekeepers were so badly disrespected and so badly paid, when you cannot open a hotel without bedrooms, and you cannot run an organization without admin. And yet we're so badly benchmarked on pay, on promotions, all that kind of thing. So please, I implore you all, be brave, be courageous. And for 2023, start saying to your companies, we want specific in-house training, whether online or in person, that is relevant to the role, whether that's with the IAAP doing something, whether that's the PA way, corporate memberships, whatever it is. Start being the ambassador for change in your profession, because you definitely have me and Melissa and Rachel and Chris's full support. So be the catalyst for change, in summary. Probably could have got there.
Like that mic drop moment.
Right? I know. Well, and I was going to tell you, Skevy, your out-of-body self still created a stir in the chat. So everybody's banding together.
I do not think that you have no worth. My God, if anything, it's on the other end of the spectrum. I cannot tell you how much I love assistance. Honestly, it's just, yeah, it's next level.
Yeah, I do think that actually speaks to the brilliance of these networks that you have access to, whether that's IAAP, the PA way. There are so many other brilliant networks out there for the administrative community. And honestly, if I were you, I would be joining as many as I possibly could, because you'll find different value from each of those networks. And it is the power. I saw someone say, yay, we ride at dawn. It made me laugh while you were speaking, Scary, because I was like, that really is like that momentum, that palpable energy that happens when we combine collectively. And that's what these networks really provide for you. So often we hear the question, you know, what do I get if I join? And we try to flip that script as often as we can and say, well, what do you want? Because you're really only going to get what you put in to the network. So it's a palpable energy that you get to tap into. And if you aren't super confident about being the leader of that advocacy or change in your organization, you might be able to find some like-minded people, even outside of your organization within IAAP or the PA way, who can help guide you and help talk you through those moments and help prepare you for those moments of advocacy that I know exist within your organization. And you're right, Skevi, like we are here to support you every step of the way. And whether that is locking arms with you to go into those meetings, whether that is sitting and preparing with you for a conversation, which might be a difficult conversation, we are here for all of that. And I know everyone else on the screen in the chat, that's why you all are here today, is to be that support network for each other.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with that. And just to add just one final thing to that, to everybody on the call, in terms of like in the chat, if you see yourself as an expense and not an investment, you are mirroring that body language, that narrative to your organization. You cannot then go into your organization and say, I would like to go to Summit in July. And then they're like, okay, right, that you're an expense. They're going to see you as an expense. But if you're doing things extracurricular and you're joining networks, whatever network it may be, out of kind of like your own pocket, and you're joining free webinars, and you're going on YouTube and going down that rabbit hole and learning and taking what you can from different things, who is going to be taken more seriously? The assistant who not only is doing all the extracurricular things, has an amazing network on LinkedIn, is commenting even just on things on LinkedIn, or the assistant in the background who is completely invisible and doesn't see their worth. Okay, start making waves. And going back to when I said I kind of did that uprising in one of my jobs, they used me as the soundboard, but most of the ideas were coming from people who were shy, people who were extremely introverted. They were coming over and leaving me notes on my desk saying, don't say this came from me, but I want this to happen. And when we did get the result, management turned around and said, who brought this idea? And I said, this person. And they were like, well, they don't even talk. And I was like, silence can be so loud. And that's what I'm trying to say. Even if you don't feel courageous to speak up, someone can speak on your behalf, but still bring your creativity and your ideas to the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was so engrossed too. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be leading this discussion. It's so I feel like we could probably still be here tomorrow talking about this. And we all are so passionate about it, but we've talked about it already. We've already been talking about it, but for you Brene Brown fans, I'm gonna cite her on this, but if you could paint done, or you could paint ideal, what would the admin profession look like in that ideal world? And I'm going to ask too, from the organization standpoint and from the admin standpoint. So both sides of the coin, just let's dream out loud. And I've seen a lot of people in the chat, so I know you all are doing it too, but what is possible if we all band together and do what we're talking about in this call, do you think?
I actually, you mentioned the administrative side and the employer side, but I actually, when I legitimately dream out loud about the future of this role in this profession, I actually think that my response covers both sides, and that really is that it becomes an enviable position. So people want to become an executive assistant or an admin, and they aspire to be so. And right now we don't really have a clear career path. If you asked a 16-year-old right now what they want to be, I would be shocked if any of them responded and said, you know, I'd love to be an executive assistant or an executive admin or an admin. And I actually believe that we have got to change that perception. And in my Brene Brown world, it really will become a role that people truly aspire to be, because they'll see how incredibly powerful and influential the role is. It is not a job that everyone can do. In fact, I would argue it takes such a unique skill set and talent to be a successful support administrative professional, that I do think that it should be a career of true thoughtful choice. And so often people fall into the role and then they discover like, oh my gosh, this is impossible. How do you do this day in and day out? That's because it is a skilled position that requires great talent. And I think it should be enviable. I think people should aspire to want to be in your position.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that, Melissa. Love that. I think for me, mine's pretty simple, because I think mine is literally to make assistants. When I say assistants, obviously I'm covering like all the roles. So I choose the word assistants. I want assistants to become so powerful that they don't know who the boss is. When somebody walks into that organization, I want assistants to have so much power that they get completely confused about who is the CEO of that company.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to do. I want to take assistants out of their boss's shadow and to own their own light, give them the spotlight. I want to give assistants the microphone and say, what's your story? Now, respectfully, I do care about, obviously, the bosses that you support and your executives, but, you know, God forbid the fire, there was a fire in the building, I'm going in for the assistants. So, you know, I want them to have that platform and that voice. And interestingly, thinking about something that Melissa just touched on about, you know, to be actually seen as a proper profession and enviable. I was out the other day just with some friends, and this one lady, she said to me, oh, she goes, I'm thinking I'm really bored in my career. She's not an assistant, by the way. She was like, oh, I'm really, really bored of my career. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry to see that. She goes, yeah, I want to just go get something like really easy and just like so easy. I'm just probably going to become admin. And literally at that point, I went like that. And my friend put their hand over my mouth. And I was like, you know, and they literally got me. They got me and they kind of shuffled me at the back of the chair. And I kept trying to turn around and they were like, do not wake up the redhead, you know, like seriously, just, and I said to her after, I was like, I'm just genuinely interested, what part of your brain thinks that being an assistant and admin is easy? And she said, oh, it's just a bit of typing, isn't it? And I said, in a dream world, yeah, probably just a bit of typing, you know? And I said, you need to go and educate yourself on what the actual role of the assistant is. And, you know, we're having a friendly conversation. I said, and then come back to me if you're dead serious about wanting to enter such an amazing profession, because there's one thing that it's not, is easy. So whoever's misinformed you, whatever Devil Wears Prada you want to see, and whatever it is, it's not easy. So yeah, we want organizations to respect us, to take us seriously, and to make a stance.
Absolutely.
I love that. Right. I can picture the whole scene happening.
Like this,
and I will say this with complete confidence. Skevi has not confirmed this, but Melissa and I have had this conversation, and Skevi, I am confident you will agree. Even though 3 out of 4 of us on the screen are no longer in the profession, if given the opportunity, we would re-enter the profession in a moment's notice. We would not hesitate to go to a role that was administrative in nature, because we love it so much, because we care about it so much, and dare I say, because we're really good at it. And being a good admin, like, that's it, right? Like, you're not just anything. And that's the confidence that we're talking about, is really owning who you are and what you do. If you stay in the role for years and years and that's your career, if you find yourself in and out of it, be your best admin self, be your best. And we've taught, like, we are still admins at heart. Whatever the title is, however that changes, we are admins at heart.
100%. And I'm sure, like, Melissa's still got her skill set from, you know, being in education and teaching. I've definitely still got the whole food side of things. Like, I eat all day. So, you know, so, even though I'm trained in French food, which is a bit too fancy, I don't make any French food anymore, but I'm still obsessed with, like, if I see a bakery or anything like that. So I think, you know, your skill sets are transferable, and you can apply them into so many different parts of also being an admin. If you fell into the industry, you know, are bringing different skill sets to the mix.
Absolutely. And I do think there's something to, there's an interesting thing that Rachel and I have experienced, because we have ascended from the administrative role into an executive leadership space. Often other executives are shocked or surprised to hear us say, yeah, I would, in a heartbeat, I would go back. If I found the right role and the right partnering space, I have absolutely no hesitation in even thinking about the next step in my career might be an administrative position. And not only am I okay with that, there's something exciting about knowing that I can do that really well if I choose to do so, and that I can have impact in an environment, in a culture, in a workplace, in many different capacities. I actually think that gives us a unique talent base that not every executive has. And it also allows us to destigmatize sometimes, without doing it kind of harshly. We do it unintentionally when we talk about our ascension to the executive role and what we do and how we embody. I speak of we when I talk about the assistant profession, because I do actually count myself as part of that, not just because I'm sitting in a seat of advocacy, but because I do actually feel connected and feel as though this is my community. You all are my peers. And so it's a very interesting space that we've been in with other executives, and speaks to this idea that somehow, I've now arrived. Why would I ever want to go back? It blows my mind. But when you think about the issues that we have with the perception of the profession, it makes complete sense that we would be having those dialogues with executives. So it's actually another interesting way that we are able to uniquely advocate on behalf of the profession.
And when has anybody ever leveled up and got to the point of something they've brought into life, something that they went out to achieve? Maybe they fulfilled a goal, whatever it is, leveling up. And when has anyone ever turned around and says, you know what, I'm good here, I'm going to go 10 steps back, and it's the same with the Loyal Royal members of the PA way. The whole reason it's level up, because when you level up, you work at such a higher frequency with your mindset that you start to attract more things into your orbit, because the way you carry yourself changes, the aura that you have changes. You don't settle for anything less than you deserve. So a lot of the Loyal Royals that we have, like, they continuously renew the membership, and I say to them, like, how come, like, obviously we love that you're back, but how come? They're like, because Skebby, I joined and I went from here to here, so now I want to go from here to here, and I'm not going to ever go back to that person that I was, because I've become this new me. And it's stepping into your light and owning that with every fiber of your being, and not settling for anything less than you deserve.
Absolutely.
Gosh, there's so many mic drop moments on here, y'all. We're still going. Don't go anywhere, but mic drop moments. So I want to make sure that we are cognizant of the time. So I think I will pause us if you both are good with that, and do a few questions from the amazing community. I knew y'all were like, chat. It's amazing. I love it. I'm like, okay, focus. I'm going to read it after, but let's do that before we get too far into. Oh, this is a great question. So Jody asks, can you ever see us getting to a point where job descriptions will be universal across any business sector? So standardization, I think, is a really great question to bring up and to talk about here.
Melissa,
I would love to tackle that first, just because the IAAP board has been working on our strategic plan, and standardization is constantly at the foundation of our discussions in terms of strategic priorities for the association. And we have the certification, we have our leadership development resources, we have our formal leadership, volunteer leadership pipeline, which all kind of support standardization in an indirect way. But we really are talking about like, how do we actually directly engage in this standardization work and this concept? And how can we take something that seems impossible, truthfully, because there are so many different job titles, different job descriptions, especially here in North America, but I think it's global. This bifurcation of the role and what it does in different companies, different industries, different organizations, and the different levels, that is different based on, you know, what organization you are in. So it feels a bit impossible from a task standpoint to tackle it. But the IAAP board really is concentrated on things that we can possibly do that would create some alignment, create some resources and tools for employers that would allow them to have kind of a templated format for job descriptions, a templated format for compensation structure, a templated format, a matrix, if you will, which is work that is currently being done by the World Administrators Alliance. There is a global skills matrix. That's kind of the very beginning or foundation point for some of the standardization work. And IAAP is starting to shift our focus a bit to what can we do here in North America, which is where the primary sphere of influence that we have is. How can we create some standardization there? So that was a long way to answer the question. I actually do believe that we can get there. It may take a minute. It may take some really hard work. But I do think both globally and with through collaborations like this, that we're partnering with the PA Way, we're partnering with other organizations too. I do think it's possible. I do think it's not possible just for job descriptions. I think it's possible from a true standardization of the role, where we are creating a framework for what position descriptions look like for different levels of the role and the profession, and what compensation should look like based on the type of industry you're in and the location that you reside in. I do think it's possible.
Oh, that's good. I do think there are elements that you can standardize to kind of have, you know, a benchmark of what the crux of the actual job is. And I think there are elements of the role in terms of a job description that, you know, it's kind of almost like the strand of DNA, if you will, that resides in the assistant role. But I also think, it's probably me being really controversial now, on the flip side of the coin, I think it's very difficult with certain things like resources that are coming out and things to kind of put people in boxes with labels, because it's such a broad spectrum. So for example, I'll use myself. I can't go in the same box as an esteemed assistant who's got like 30 years of knowledge and skills. How can I go in that box? You know, I wouldn't even feel worthy of being in that box with somebody that has been an absolute powerhouse for the last 30 years in the profession, you know. But equally, that person who might have 30 years might not perhaps know some of the skills that I know as a millennial assistant. And it works both ways, because I can learn from that person things that probably don't even get discussed anymore. And it's almost like secrets of the trade. And they're the people that I really love learning from. But equally, that person might look at me and think, you know what, Skevy, I need help with this as well. So how do we kind of decipher who goes in what box and in what lane with these matrices that are out there and things like that? So yes, they have their uses, but equally, I think job descriptions should kind of depend on the role. And you said that as well, Melissa. It depends what the organization wants. You know, someone might apply for a construction company and they might need very minimal assistant job kind of things, but then you might be applying to somebody else who's like, okay, we need to be putting out 50 events a year, a gala, a conference. That person cannot apply to that job because they don't have the skill set. So whilst it's still up in the air and there's pros and cons, me personally, I think yes, try and standardize the actual crux of the job, that strand, but then let everybody bring their skills, their creativity, their talents that they've learned throughout the years. I just think that trying to put labels on assistants when everyone brings their own kind of, again, zone of genius is might be a bit challenging. So that's my side of the coin.
Yeah, and I do think you raise an excellent point, which really is, standardization will never define everything.
Yeah.
It can't. It's impossible to do so. And so when we talk about standardization, I think it's critical that we create clarity here, that we are not trying to box everyone in or create such a rigid standardization or matrix that it doesn't allow people to move or grow, or it doesn't allow organizations to grow or utilize the different talents and skills that admins bring to the table, because it is unique in that way as a role where it can look very different from one industry to another, from one organization to another, and some of that is really good. Some of that is actually beneficial for both the role and the employer. So you mentioned DNA strand, and I think that's a beautiful way to kind of think about it. But standardization is intended to ensure that every admin has equitable access to development. They have a consistent experience across the board around value proposition and what the role is intended to do within an organization. So I totally agree that there has to be both. It cannot be, we will never reach a point, not a viable point, where I think we are seeing the greatest success of the role if we try to box it in too much. So we can't over define it. Standardization does not mean that, at least not when we talk about it in the sense of IAAP. And I do think that it's kind of a trap for admins, because we are so detail oriented and we want to check all the boxes and make sure that we've thought of all of the potential what if scenarios and we have accounted for them. So that standardization work can be a little scary or tricky for us, because I think we do have a tendency to want to define everything or over standardize it, if I can say it that way. And that will not serve us either. So I think that's a great point, Debbie.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to be controversial. Sorry, Rachel. I was just basically probably the assistant brain in me, like looking at all options, you can, it's kind of like take from it what you will. I think having some sort of standardization to show companies and organizations to be like, you need to be making sure that you're, as the company, you're ticking X, Y, and Z as even a basic minimum. This is what you should be doing, but then bring all the flavor, bring all the ingredients that assistants offer and put it in that melting pot and just really show the professional excellence that everybody has. So yes.
Yeah, agree. And there are so many, if you look at other professions, that's a very standard, I'm trying to think of one. All I can think of is doctor right now. So that's a horrible analogy, but you have the standard, like everybody has to do this, know this, and then you've got the different pieces and specialization and on a very small, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I like to use accountants for my reference, because everyone knows that whether you have a staff accountant, a management accountant, or you have a CPA that you hire that does, there are different specializations or different opportunities within accounting to have different roles and responsibilities, but there is a base or core set of expectations that every accountant has to have. They have to have knowledge in these things, and they get access to X amount of things in an organization, one of them being respect. And that is part of standardization, is creating baseline value and respect for the position and the profession.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a much better analogy. Okay. What other questions do we have? I've got a couple in here, but I'm going to pause for just a second to see if anybody else, we probably have time for one more before we wrap up.
I see Jody's question about the top 3 leads. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah,
know
absolutely.
Jody had 2 questions, so you get.
I was trying to make space,
I know.
but yes, we can definitely ask Jody's question. So Jody asks, what are your top 3 or more? No apologies needed, Jody. I think it's great. So let's stick with 3 or 4, just for the sake of time. What are your top 3 or 4 words to include in an assistant's headline, resume, cover letter, or bio to stand out and get away from the generic description of us? So I think that's beautiful. It kind of really ties on to what we were talking about with standardization. So.
See, if I was answering this one-on-one with Jody, like, because she knows me so well, I would probably, if it was me, I would just be like, I'm a badass. You know? That would literally be in the title, because that's how I see assistants. Right? They are absolutely amazing. But I think in terms of, I would definitely get the word confident in there, professional, and maybe like the word seasoned, so that you're showing that, you're encompassing all your knowledge as well. Because obviously if you're posting on something on LinkedIn, it kind of needs to be professional. But yeah, or even just different words like, I don't know, strategic or thought leader, because even though you might not think it, you actually are thought leading, and you do it every single day, because you need to be working out where that diary is going, how you're going to getting your executive from A to B. So there is a lot of thought and leading behind it as well. So maybe don't use my first suggestion on LinkedIn, but
that was a bonus. That was freebie for everybody.
Just know that's how I really feel.
Yeah. I think strategic is a fabulous one. I always will advocate that you include leader somehow, some way. Influencer is another one that I would advocate for. And lastly, change agent, I think, is one that if you can truly embody being a change agent, and that means it does require you to show up as an agent for change. So don't put it if you're not comfortable with change, or not comfortable being an agent of change, but if you put change agent, I promise you it's going to align you with positions that are seeking someone in that role to be an influencer. So it will hopefully match you up with positions that are ready for your agency of change.
I like that. Or full-time wizard, that's another one. Full-time wizard. Chris is a full-time wizard.
I love it. I love it. There's some great suggestions in the chat too. So free resources. That's what we do as a community, is help each other out. So we have 2 minutes, and oh my gosh, I wanted to leave more time for this, so my apologies, but this is our call to action time. Like, this was absolutely an incredible discussion. I hope everyone enjoyed it and really took some things away from it. Whatever your one thing is, actually, while you both answer this question, I would love for people to kind of throw in their takeaway in the chat. Wait until they share, because it may be in what they share. But what is one thing you would ask of each admin participating on the call today? How can we be those change agents that you mentioned?
You want? I can go first. My call to action for you all is to level up. So that might mean, if you didn't know about the PA Way before today, that might mean looking at the PA Way as another community and another resource. If you didn't know about IAAP, it might mean leveling up and looking at what IAAP has to offer for you. It might mean going and having a difficult conversation in your organization with somebody you've been meaning to talk to, your executive, someone who can support your development. It can mean lots of different things, but it really is about not being a passive participant in your career and being the active change agent that I know you can be, and that I know that you are, and that really is how you will propel your career forward. So get involved.
Love that. Love that. And I love that you use level up as well. For me, it's just really simple. Just the call of action today is just to go believe in yourself. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but once you start talking to yourself with that mindset of, instead of what if, but what now, you start believing in yourself, opportunities start coming towards you, you unlock your potential, and you start gravitating to the things that you know you deserve in abundance. So just believe in yourself. Come, like Melissa said, come, you know, if you're new to PAYA, come and hang out with us. If you're new to IAAP, come and hang out with them as well. And yeah, I'm just really proud of you all. I really, really am. I'm so proud of you, because I know it's not easy at the best of times, and your perseverance shines through. So please be the change agent, like Melissa said, and be the catalyst for change going forward.
Love it. Love it. Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for joining. This was, I hope, as impactful for you as it has been for us. And you have an advocate in your corner. You have multiple advocates in your corner, but all 4 of us on the screen, you can count us as allies and advocates. Anything you need from us, please do not hesitate to shout. You are welcome to share this recording. I saw some chat about sharing it with your organizations, with your executives, with your HR. Share far and wide. This is a conversation that is not had enough, and we are happy to help with follow-up. Anything that comes out of that, please go ahead and give us a shout. We wish you all a beautiful, happy, restful, joyful holiday season, and we look forward to chatting to you very soon. Thank you both. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much. Bye.